In December 2021, Blair Brimmell was appointed the Interim Director for the proposed Climate Change and Security Center of Excellence, CASCOE, in addition to her role as the section lead for Climate and Security Policy in the Defense and Security Relations Division of Global Affairs Canada. As Interim Director with CASCOE, Ms. Brimmell is responsible for the development of the Center of Excellence initiative, working with Canadian and international stakeholders towards its eventual launch. Thank you so much for being here today, Ms. Brimmell. Look forward to hearing from you. I'll give you the floor.
Thank you so much, Logan. And may I just begin by saying what a panel we just heard, what an event that's been put on today. So really just fantastic work all around. And I've been fascinated to hear what everybody has had to say, and really tremendous points brought up all around. So for myself, I'll begin with some confessions, if I may. I don't know how to handle a firearm. I don't know how to plan a military operation. And you could fill books with the military doctrine that I don't know. In fact, I believe they have. So I share these disclaimers at the outset just to explain that while I'm lucky enough to be addressing this event about climate change and security and the role of defense, I'm not a member of the military and the defense world. So why am I speaking to you, and what is it that I do? Well, I work for Canada's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Global Affairs Canada, and in a division that's focused on defense and security relations. And the message that I want to share with you today is about the need for us to undertake all our climate change and defense work in cooperation with one another. I'll also tell you a bit about a unique institution that we're working to establish to enable collaboration in this space, because we're convinced that bringing many voices together to address climate insecurity will result in better outcomes for more people. So let me begin by speaking a bit more about the need for cooperation as I see it. So first, we know that the scale of the climate change threat is vast. None of you who've already heard the excellent speakers already today will need me to tell you that climate change is one of the greatest challenges that we face as a global community. It's true that the direct impacts of climate change will be different for every region, with some facing devastating and unrelenting droughts, while others are pummeled by devastating storms. But we know that our world and that our security are deeply interconnected, and that the security implications of climate change do therefore create what can be considered a global challenge. Second, in terms of severity, we can see that this is truly an existential threat with long-term consequences, and one that we won't escape. There's no doubt that climate change will affect the security interests of every one of our nations around the globe. And we know too that we haven't seen the worst of it. Climate impacts are only going to grow over the coming decades. Finally, we need to acknowledge, and I think that we already have in previous panels, how truly complex this problem is. We're not talking about one line of effort we need to undertake, or a few phenomena that we need to understand, or a handful of new skills that we need in order to neutralize this threat. We need not only to mitigate climate change, but also at the same time and with equal urgency to adapt and to prepare our defense and security forces and other peace promoting and stability preserving institutions to enable them to fulfill their missions in an environment that's transformed by climate shocks and trends. So to do all this, I believe that we need to build upon and we need to profit from one another's work, which, as we've heard today, is in many cases already excellent and very significant. So put another way, because the need is urgent, complex, and large in scale, our response to the threat posed by the climate crisis must be universal, collective, and cooperative. Each nation has unique needs and knowledge and capabilities to respond. For example, Canada and our Arctic allies have deep knowledge about the changing nature of operations in the Arctic and the high north. It's something we can share and bring to the table. Different sectors too need to be engaged, and they need to cross paths in this effort, be they military or the humanitarian sector, industry, civil society, and many others. We need a real range and variety of tools to address this complex, actorless threat that is climate change. And finally, I'd point out that diverse individuals also have unique capacities to help us understand the true multiplicity of climate change security threats and the responses needed. In addressing climate change and security, we need to ensure that we're promoting everyone's security and well-being. We hear often that certain populations, for example, Indigenous peoples, women and girls, individuals with lower socioeconomic status, or others, they might be disproportionately impacted. But let's recall too that many directly affected people also have deep knowledge and means of response that we should be paying attention to and we should be learning from. By pooling our efforts in this work, by learning from one another across nations and between sectors and from different life experiences, our responses, I think, can be far more effective than those that we could build working in silos. So the type of rich connections that we're going to need, I think we know they don't just happen. They need to be built, and they need to be supported, and they need an environment in which to flourish. So it was with this need for greater connection, cooperation, and inclusivity that last year in 2021, Canada's Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, proposed that Canada would establish and serve as framework nation for a NATO Climate Change and Security Center of Excellence. The mandate here in Canada to establish this institution, it's one that's shared by our defense and our foreign ministers. And so already here you see some collaboration in action. And in my role as Interim Director of the COE, I'm charged with driving this project forward towards its launch, together with our Ministry of Defense, other partners, our NATO allies, and other stakeholders. And here I'll just back up to explain, for any of you who are unfamiliar with NATO Centers of Excellence, that these are international military organizations that are established, run, staffed, and funded by self-selecting groups of NATO allies. NATO Centers of Excellence are centers of expertise on specific topics. Some examples are military medicine, energy security, cyber defense, military engineering. They help to test concepts and to build doctrine, and they also train and educate personnel from allied and partner nations on their own specialized topics. Many of them also collaborate with civil society, and they can share significant expertise also with the wider global community. The need for a NATO Center of Excellence for climate change and security became apparent as the NATO alliance began a renewed and ambitious effort in 2020 and 2021 to address the security impacts of climate change. work which Canada actively supports. The Climate Change and Security COE, or CASCOE, as we call it, will provide essential complementary capacity as part of these efforts. Canada's intent is for CASCOE to really be a hub of expertise for military and also for relevant civilian practitioners. In it and through it, NATO allies and other partners and a range of diverse individuals and representatives from many sectors can work cooperatively to expand knowledge and to increase our capacity to adapt to the changing climate, with particular attention to military and defense needs. We expect that the mission of the COE will closely mirror and support NATO's identified climate and security priorities, notably on awareness, adaptation, and mitigation. From an awareness perspective, the COE can support better understanding of the problem and build awareness, or what's been called earlier today, literacy about the problem and about the impact of climate change on our security interests. This might mean effects on stability and conflict in the strategic environment, effects in particular theaters, effects on operational requirements, equipment, or more. This will include undertaking new work to fill gaps, but also critically leveraging and sharing existing research, data, and analysis. Awareness itself has to drive our work to support adaptation to the identified and anticipated impacts of climate change. CASCOE will support efforts towards adaptation across a range of militarily relevant concerns. These might span from military infrastructure planning and use to exploring the best means to work with non-military partners to address the full spectrum of climate and security challenges. Finally, because NATO and allies recognize the need to mitigate the climate and environmental impacts of military and defense activity itself, CASCOE can also play a role to support this kind of work. For example, it might collect, assess, and help to share best practices for reducing military emissions while maintaining critical operational effectiveness. While doing all this, enhancing synergy with other complementary NATO work strands, including women, peace and security and human security work, will also be part of the COE's value added. These should be essential lenses through which the COE conducts its work. There are a few other key principles and approaches that we hope will characterize the operations, relationships, and interactions of CASCOE. First, while clearly committed to providing military value as a first priority, we believe the Center of Excellence can and must take a multi-sectoral approach. The complex nature of climate change as a threat requires us to bring together a variety of both military and non-military practitioners from a range of fields that might not even normally work hand in hand. We hope that the COE will hear and learn from and serve a diverse community, drawing lessons from many for our collective benefit. Widely informed collaboration is going to be essential to the execution of its mission. Second, we intend for global outreach and partnership to be a strong theme for CASCOE. Climate and security, we all know it's a global issue. And as such, valuable expertise is to be found outside of NATO, among our NATO partners and other global actors. We can benefit from this expertise as allies, and we can anticipate that any knowledge, partnership, or assistance that may be appropriately shared with others by the COE will be well received. Finally, and related to both these themes of multi-sectoral and global connectedness, we intend for this Center of Excellence to operate with a strong virtual capacity. Ensuring that CASCOE has the ability to undertake many of its activities, including training, with the aid of virtual connection tools like we're using right now, will promote the ease of connections among partners. And as a bonus, it will also limit the carbon footprint of the center and its activities themselves. Over the coming months, we're going to work on finishing the design and concept for CASCOE and refining this. And we'll then look forward to launching with our allies this institution that will benefit NATO and our partners, and as much as possible, the global community. It's a collaborative effort. We're looking forward to assembling a diverse set of perspectives and skills through CASCOE, enabling us to craft holistic and creative and ultimately more effective solutions to the challenges that we're facing. To conclude, I'll reiterate that the security risks associated with climate change are clearly real. They can, in fact, seem overwhelming, and they're already affecting our communities the world over. But we won't balk in the face of the challenge. We're going to meet it in the best way that we know how, shoulder to shoulder with one another. We need to cooperate to find the best answers, and we need to cooperate to ensure that everyone is accounted for in our efforts. The COE we're building will be as successful as its members and its partners make it. I hope that many of you, the nations or institutions that you represent, may join or collaborate with CASCOE in the coming years.